Welcome to the Near Memo, a weekly conversation about search, social, and commerce. What happened, why it matters, and the implications for local.
No. And that's how Google I/O seemed to me. I mean, it seemed like that same cognitive load. As I am going to take control of the segue here and read a quote from Lauren Good, who was writing about the Google I/O. And she said, it was as though Google took the index cards for the screenplay it's been writing for the past 25 years, tossed them in the air to see where the cards might fall. Also, the screenplay was written by AI. I thought that cognitive load that you're talking about, that is a function of their structure. And they don't drive a vision, cohesive vision. They allow this bottom-up stuff, and it creates this turmoil. And that turmoil was very evident to me in the presentation, starting with the DJ at the beginning, which we will leave unnamed.
Let's not talk about that guy. Oh my God! I said on LinkedIn, it struck me as a Silicon Valley parody of a Google I/O event starting out for the first 20 minutes.
You don't want to drink coffee; you want to shout it.
That's right. So I do think, though, that there's just to extend this metaphor about sort of throwing the cards up in the air and seeing, where they land, and the fact that AI wrote the screenplay. I mean, Google's answer to all this complexity is not, sort of a fresh start, tabula rasa, right? Google's answer to this is, oh, great. AI is now going to organize those cards for you in the search result, right? I mean, it was just, that was the quote unquote air quotes, fingers in the air brilliance of, Liz Reed's demo. Was she was showing like just how compelling it was, in this trip planning itinerary example that she was doing, or restaurants for a date in Dallas or something like that. And it was just, there were just this multimodal set of results, which again was very heavily locally influenced. And we'll talk about that, I'm sure. But like, there was still this, Greg, to your point, sort of, it was a very sort of chaotic feel to what they were presenting on the screen. And yes, technically the stuff they were doing, I'm sure, was super impressive. The ability to interpret this, I don't even know how many words, 25 word keyword string to return a reasonable set of results. Like, that is absolutely very impressive. But I think that there's still this like tethering to, we have all of these things behind the scenes that we have to somehow get in front of users. And I'm not sure that that's going to be the user interface that's going to win out, as they now actually seem to have potentially a real competitor.
Yeah, the thing that Google used to do, I was struck in the OpenAI presentation about how they talked about this feels like magic. This is magical, which is something that Apple will periodically say, but something that really used to characterize Google search. There was a single box. You could type anything into it, and then you would get information back. And more often than not, that information was useful. And it seems to me that Google has kind of moved farther and farther and farther away from that. Now, OpenAI has kind of claimed that place. There's a single user interface. You can do all kinds of things with it beyond what search is capable of today. And it's a very simple proposition for the end user. And it's one place that you go to do all those things, notwithstanding the GPT store business. And Google now is kind of adding more and more complexity, both to search and also to, like, where do you go? We were talking about gems, their sort of individual agent functionality. And it's like, where do you go to access that? And what can you do over here? Workspace, Gemini, the URL, and search. Google has kind of distributed all this functionality across these different places. And there's a lot to remember. There's a lot to figure out. Like, what can I do over here? What can I do over here? And there's the presentation was just full of like complexity, and it just felt really kind of difficult to kind of assimilate all that information. I mean, maybe it was because there was a ton of it being dumped on us, but that seems to me to be going in the opposite direction of what Google's fundamental value proposition used to be.
Yep. No, I would agree with that. I do think that there's some, I certainly think that some of the things that they introduced or announced, because I don't think they're actually live yet, around sort of the ability to deploy multiple gems and have each gem, have a particular skill set and a particular domain expertise, right? So one might be really great at, spreadsheets, another one might be great at copywriting or whatever, right? I don't know what the possibilities are, but that to me seems really smart. Like if you think of these chatbots as effectively as interns, I think is a good analogy that I've seen out there, even in the SEO space. You don't necessarily want your same intern to be doing all of the jobs that you need it to do. You probably want multiple interns. You want one to get you your coffee. You want one to be your, scheduler. You want one. So I think that the notion of having multiple personal agents, I think, is a good sort of product notion. But to your point, Greg, that there's a major sort of discoverability, issue here with respect to, okay, well, what can Gemini, like, where is Gemini baked into this particular product, and what are the things that it's potentially doing really well? That to me still seems very sort of unformed from a product strategy standpoint. Not that it's an easy question, but I did feel that same sort of tension that you did in terms of like, okay, there's some really great stuff, but how to it's almost harder to figure out what that stuff would be than it is to just do it myself. So.
Yeah, I mean, I watched that. I mean, the question of that you raised of what's live, what isn't, what is just vaporware and never will be live was unanswered, as well as Greg's question about where in their stack does it fit? Like, is it a YouTube feature? Is it a search feature? Is it a workplace feature? Right. And I guess it seems like the value that they're going to extract from this is, at least some of it is subscription value in workplace in one form or another, either as a standalone or integrated. Well, which speaks to why they're talking to HubSpot, right? Is they really want to grow that subscription business.
And that was one of the most impressive, I think at this point, vaporware features where Gemini has the potential to sort of, be a dumping ground for all of your receipts and put them in a spreadsheet, behind the scenes. Like that actually would be a really useful feature for a lot of small businesses.
I totally agree. I think that one of the most interesting aspects of that whole presentation that was workspace, and where could they take workspace? They could make it a light CRM tool. They could do all kinds of things with it that I think would be really useful for small business customers. And potentially threatening to a lot of SaaS companies. And that's a kind of separate discussion. I don't know if Google will fully realize the potential there because, everything is going to be tied to revenue. How much revenue do you need to justify the investment, and so on and so forth? Cultural dynamics we've talked about a lot, but I think there's enormous potential there, and it's a really, really interesting deployment of Gemini, and something that has real world value for people, as opposed to some of these things which are really obscure or more hypothetical. Or
the 25-minute sound mixing demo that we got at the start from whoever this sort of caped DJ was. I mean, that just to me has zero real world applicability, and to waste to waste your sort of primary engagement on such a BS low value feature was mind-blowing to me. So
thanks for joining David, Mike, and Greg. To stay on top of the latest developments in local, subscribe to our newsletter at nearmedia.co. We'll see you next week.